Thank you. Power pose. So thanks. My name is Elsina, and I'm delighted to be here today speaking on the topic of mastering the game of program management. And there are many program management frameworks out there, and I'm sure you're familiar with many of these, but I thought about it and then I decided, this hurts my eyes. So instead, I'm going to take you on a more fun and enjoyable journey as we experience the highs and lows of program management. So here we are. We're going to play some snakes and ladders, aka Chutes and Ladders in the US. And here is our noble and valiant and charmingly naive program manager, ready to start work on an exciting new program and lead the team to success. So let's see how she does. Let's roll the dice. And amazing! 12 spaces we maxed out on the first try. We are steaming ahead. We'll be done with this program in no time, except, we hit a snake's head. And we're pretty much back to the beginning. But why? Well, our program was canceled because there was no justifiable business case and it didn't align with the overall strategic objectives of the business. I'm sure we've all been there at least once in our careers. And this just highlights the importance of program managers making sure that they're intimately familiar with the drivers of the programs that they're executing so that they can justify the program not only to themselves, but their teammates and their stakeholders. And it just involves being curious and asking 5 questions. Who's this program for? What's the need or the opportunity that we're going after? How are we best positioned to build solutions that will address those needs? What are the resources that I have available to me? What's it going to cost to do this? And what's the intended impact? And just as well as understanding those drivers is being able to kind of quantify them and to quantify that based on a simple calculation around like return on investment. And so it basically means if we put something in, what do we get out of that? And based on your program, the gains and the costs may look slightly different than the ones that I have here. But nevertheless, these can be used to help translate and decompose business goals and strategies all the way down to explain how those might impact organizational units that you're working with, your overall program level goals, and even drive the justification behind individual features that your teams are working on. And a fantastic framework for tying this all together so that you can launch your program with a really great framework for understanding what are the financial targets behind the program that you're running, what is the customer value that we're hoping to deliver here, how is our organization going to learn and grow from this and expand our intellectual property rights and so on and position ourselves to develop the next level of maturity in terms of the programs that we're working on. And how can we fine-tune our business processes so that we're being as efficient as possible to deliver the value that we're trying to achieve. All right, so we're back in the game again, and this time we got a 4, and we hit a ladder, woohoo! And this time we're going up because we actually completed some user research. And I probably don't need to overstate the importance of this, but equally important to understanding the business drivers is to understand what your customers actually want. And this involves basically doing a little bit of research to understand what are the things that they're craving, what are the pain points that they hope someone's going to solve for them, and what constitutes a usable product for them, so that when you launch this, it actually lands well in the marketplace. And my favorite exercise to go through with a team as a TPM is to fill out a value proposition canvas. And what you're doing here is basically aligning your product managers, your user researchers, and your whole team around who is the customer? What are they doing on a day-to-day basis? What tools are available to them today? And where are the pain points? And what are the potential gains that could be had if we fix their pain points for them? And then, conversely, how are we going to develop products and features to actually alleviate those pains? And if you do this and back it up with some user research in the field, you can build really insightful user journey maps that basically characterize your users and their days and their interactions to really help you figure out how to develop the best possible products to meet their needs. And all of this culminates in user profiles that your team can have access to actually build empathy so that everyone feels like they're building for a person who's actually going to hold that product or use that product, and that it's not going into a black hole, and it's something that can, again, help drive the conversation and focus it as you're developing the product. Okay, so let's roll the dice. We got a 1 this time, and we landed on a star. And this is because we took and translated those into a well-written set of product requirements. And you may say, well, I'm in Silicon Valley and I'm agile, so do we really need product requirements? Can't we just start building? We know what we need to do. And yes, it's all relative, of course. If you're an established global company with billions of users, you don't just want to wing it. It's more important that you sit down and think about the product requirements and nail those down. And obviously, there are appropriate times when you're developing medical devices and construction projects where you need a very refined product requirements document. But what I'm talking about here is basically articulating user needs as user stories, which I think we're probably all familiar with, and then contextualizing those requirements and needs around use cases or scenarios that a user is in. And similarly, thinking about how does a system need to function to be able to deliver on those needs in those scenarios. And one way that's one very effective way of being able to visualize the flow and the behavior of the system from the user perspective is to build a use case model diagram. So here you can look at an ecosystem of your users, because there could be multiple users using your product from different perspectives. So being able to show how the flow of data needs to be enabled throughout the system to enable different versions of your product based on different user interfaces can be super useful at this stage. All right. Let's roll the dice again. We got an 8. Yeah, we're blasting ahead here. But we landed on another snake's head. And what happened? We wrote our PRD, but then we just started working on stuff, and we didn't actually agree it with key stakeholders. We didn't bother to get alignment across the organization on relative priorities, what's in scope, what's out of scope, whether we actually have the resources to build what we spec'd. And this isn't just a simple case of like prioritizing everything from like 1 to 5,000 or however many, depending on how eager your product manager is. It's really thinking strategically about how are we going to iteratively develop and deliver value for our customers over time that helps us really nail the product over time. So again, it's about putting together a backlog that is very thoughtfully constructed and strategically constructed around how you can get to the best version of your most quickly. Okay, so we're rolling the dice and we got a 2. Okay, we got a lucky break here. We went up a ladder. And that's because we took our product requirements document and we built a dependency map to show which teams are depending on which other teams in order to deliver on to build the products that we want to build. And back in the good old days when I was a whippersnapper, we all used to get the teams in the same room and we had a big wall and post-it notes, and each team would have a swim lane, and then they would demonstrate how with each iteration how they were going to deliver certain functionality, and then other teams would come along with red string and then map one post-it note to another and say, hey, I have a dependency on you here. And then there'd be an argument about, oh, we can't possibly do this by this date. And then there'd be a compromise. And you'd figure out your dependencies, and everyone would have expectations level set once a month during this sync. Now, today, with distributed teams, this is a little bit more challenging, but there are great tools that you can use to do this, even a Google Sheet. That you just need to, as a TPM, we kind of need to be the forcing function to bring the teams together on a regular cadence to map out and understand these dependencies. And by the way, you can't really do that dependency mapping if you don't have a good understanding of the system architecture. And you may say, and maybe this has been covered, well, the TPMs really need to understand the system architecture and the system level components and interfaces. And I guess actually by virtue of the T, we kind of do. Because what this diagram is a bunch of handoffs and interfaces and dependencies, and those are all risks. So you really do need to understand how is the presentation layer affected by the business and process layer? How does the data layer enable parts of the user stories? And how do teams need to work together to make sure that this happens? And this is going to drive your dependency map. And one of my favorite things to do with a team to vet a system architecture is to basically play out the user stories on top of the architecture via a sequence diagram. So what you do here is you pick a user persona and then pick a user journey and the user stories and literally walk through exactly what the user is going to be doing and then show how different parts of the architecture light up to enable that journey. And that helps to align the entire team so that everyone understands, okay, yeah, these components are doing these things. They need to function in this way in order to enable this end goal that the user is trying to accomplish. And it really helps make sure that there are no gaps. Okay, so we got a 1 this time. Where did we land? We're back on a snake. This snake is going to get fat. It's had us twice now. All right, what happened here? We had a partnership breakdown. And sadly, I'm sure many of you have experienced situations where the business drivers were perfectly intact. We had great requirements, but we had very poorly managed relationships, and there was a bust up in the team or with a stakeholder or a partner. And just for the sake of defining things here, stakeholders could be anyone internal to your project who is affected by your program or the strategy that you're driving towards. And partners may or may not be external to your organization, and you're partnering with them to kind of achieve your objectives. And let's just take a moment to acknowledge that dealing with people is hard. And the reason it's so freaking hard is because there's so freaking many of them. And many of us are working on programs that have hundreds of stakeholders, all with conflicting priorities, all with conflicting objectives, different communication styles, cultural differences. And so as a result, it makes it really difficult to have a combined shared vision with everyone rowing in the same direction. So with that said, it really does pay on the larger programs to put together a well thought out stakeholder management plan. And it's basically a 4-step process: identifying your stakeholders, analyzing them to understand their needs, assessing them to figure out how important they are, and then putting an engagement plan in place to help you effectively manage the ones that really matter. And when you're putting this engagement plan in place, it's good to consider these 3 things. One of my favorite Venn diagrams. What is the power of a stakeholder to influence the outcome of your project? Like, could they really mess things up for you? Second, what's the legitimacy of their claim? Like, they could be a really powerful stakeholder, but they're in another department, and really your program is none of their business. They're just like a casual observer. And then, how urgently does this stakeholder need you to deliver on certain things for your program? So if you can take these things into consideration, it can help you figure out who are the stakeholders I need to be really careful about managing, because they could really mess things up for me and my team. And with that said, it's important to kind of, as a TPM, as we all know, to set the tone for how the entire team is going to behave and interact with each other on the duration of a program. And by virtue of the fact that we're TPMs, almost every TPM has got great interpersonal skills, but sometimes it needs to be written down in a charter or softly kind of stated at a kickoff meeting to encourage the team to think about, what does it mean to be a good partner? You know, and there are some bullets here. You know, we want to be communicating regularly with one another. We want to respect each other. Everyone should have very clear roles and responsibilities. We should take responsibility for our actions. If we make mistakes, we should own up to them, but we shouldn't be assigning blame. We should, you know, move on and support one another and bolster each other's strengths and weaknesses and so on. Okay, rolling the dice again. We got a 3, and this time, rainbows, woohoo! And that's because we have a highly functioning performant team. And I've only got 1 slide on this, but this could be like a day's presentation. Everyone wants to build performance teams, but when we think about what a performant team is, it's really made up of people who are very goal-oriented and ambitious. They're committed to their colleagues and the mission. They're highly skilled, experts in their field. You can rely on them pretty much 100% to crack a problem. They're collaborative and they encourage one another. They're always coming up with new ideas to kind of get around problems. They hold themselves to a high standard and their colleagues, and they're willing to accept constructive criticism. So as TPMs, on a daily basis, we need to be thinking about how do we create environments that nurture this type of a team? And really it comes down to these kind of 5 things. These types of high-performing teams expect us to grease the wheels for them. Like, they want calm and efficiency across all units. They don't want chaos and confusion. They want very specific goals that they want to be working towards, and they want everyone rowing in the same direction versus like tug of war. They want to be able to learn from each other professionally and grow and learn and develop new skills. And most importantly, they want purpose and to be able to see demonstrable impact, which goes back to being able to, you know, properly be able to kind of quantify and qualify business impact and user value. Okay, back in the game. This time we got a 4. Where did we land? Woohoo! we're getting a lift from the fireman penguin. And that's because we did some design reviews. And yeah, this is a super corny slide, and my little guy is really into Pokemon, my 4-year-old, not my husband, although he likes them too. But, you know, as a species and as a team, we are better together. And design reviews are just a place to come to share what you're doing and to get affirmation or, you know, or feedback. It's a great opportunity to innovate and collaborate on solutions together. It's a good way to bring small teams together with big teams with, you know, different perspectives to potentially identify risks and issues early. And it's a super way to foster communication between designers, owners, and builders in a forum that's literally dedicated for that purpose. And obviously there are many different types of design reviews: architecture reviews, code reviews, privacy requirements. You can do reviews where there's demos or simulations, and you can have more structured stage gate reviews as well, where you're literally bringing multiple teams together to kind of align everyone around like a common stage gate, whether it's making sure that product requirements are satisfying the business needs, to making sure that the architecture is well thought out and there aren't some teams that are going against the grain that's going to cause problems later, to having a cohesive testing and validation strategy. Really, you kind of need to think about what are the frameworks that will work well for you in your program. All right, we got a 1. Is that a good or a bad thing? What happened? Okay, cheers everyone. You effectively managed your risks. Again, only one slide here, and this could be a multi-day workshop, but risks come in many different shapes and sizes. You can have product risks, technical risks, safety risks, socioeconomic risks, branding risks, schedule, budget risks, whatever. But as TPMs, the more frameworks that you can leverage to properly manage those risks, to identify them, qualify them, and quantify them so that you can put mitigation plans in place, the more chances of success you have. And I put trust your instincts up there because, you know, sometimes you have to actually be burned to know how to properly identify risks. Some of it just comes with experience. Like, you need to have been around for a while to know which teams, you know, can be trusted when they give you a date and which ones can't, which parts of the architecture is super flaky, and so you need to kind of give that team, you know, 3 more weeks versus, you know, the 1 week that they quoted. So some of this does come down to just experience on the job and being burned a few times. All right, we got a 2. Okay, damn, we're so close to the finish line, another snake, Okay, we failed our privacy and security review. No one likes compliance, and since we're all operating on a global landscape now, it's an absolute minefield. Like, forget about trying to work with Asia and Europe and whatever, like just state to state within the US, the policies, rules, and regulations vary. So almost every big company has a dedicated compliance team. So the sooner you can start working with them to understand like how you need to position your product, what you can and can't say in your marketing materials, etc., like the better. And obviously we're all impacted by data privacy compliance. Like, you definitely don't want a data leak. And just being aware of just generally what the requirements are here can serve you well, especially if you're dealing with personally identifiable information. All right, we're almost there. We got a 6, and we each get a medal because we passed user acceptance testing. And there are many different types of testing that I've represented here: unit testing, integration testing, system user acceptance testing, verification, validation, clinical validation testing. But the point being here that it really needs to be, this needs to be a thoughtful exercise that is built in alongside all of your development and design work. So if you do have a separate testing organization, they literally need to be meshed and side by side with the engineers, building out testing strategies that are going to help scale your product and make sure that you deliver a quality solution. And that every single time someone makes a change, you can very quickly run a set of regression tests to look at the impact of that change. All right, almost there. Balloons for everyone. We had clear and complete communications. Again, just one slide here. This is a big topic, but obviously super important whenever you launch a new product to be engaged with your customers, to explain what the value proposition is to them, to provide appropriate training, user manuals, etc., and to think very carefully about how you want to market and position this. And final throw of the dice, we launched maybe the most important part of all of this is celebrating your successes, recognizing the team's efforts, but don't forget, there's a whole bunch of additional work that needs to be done on the back end, dealing with bugs and feature requests and customer support. So thank you all very much for that whirlwind tour. Hopefully it wasn't too fast.
If you have any questions, please let me know. Anybody with questions?
Hello.
Hi.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. This was an amazing session. You, in a very short period of time, you went through the entire TPM journey. All of us work with different companies, different functions, but I think you brought all of us together here. And your slides were fantastic. They were loaded, they were fantastic. So thank you so much. It was a great session.
Thank you. I guess the power poses worked. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh.
Thanks, great presentation. How do you broadly described everything, and I feel like a lot of the areas you touched are actually product managers' role. How do you, as a TPM, deal with the challenges where you have conflicting roles with product team and so forth and so on? User journey mapping. It's usually done by design and product. Usually TPMs are not expected to do it, even we would like to participate. And that creates a conflict. How do you deal with that?
So it's not usually, you're right, there can be conflicts there, but it's not usually about telling the team how to do that part. It's just making sure that it's planned in to make sure that we don't skip that step. And again, once you see the power of a bunch of UI mocks being built up front, even though the engineers aren't ready to get started, you get the experience of realizing, wow, that the power in drawing and a visual artifact can really help motivate and drive a team. So it's not so much building the UI mocks yourself, it's just understanding that that's a critical part of like the overall program success. And product managers and the UI people should value that. Like you're saying to them, the work that you're doing is so valuable, and like help me help you to like share that message. So whether it's business value, I mean, it may not be you explaining the business value, just you talking to the product managers to say, here's a platform for you to share the impact that we're having, and here's a platform UX designer for sharing the work that you're doing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Elsina.